Army to give me the orders to come down there. And then in our team, I got assigned to what was the International Rifle Team. All the military, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Army had shooting teams in those days. And so the International Shooting Team was the one I was bound for. And we had a Captain Foster, John Foster, was in charge of it at that time. And he was no dummy. And he had been around and gone to Europe a bunch of times and shot, I think it was 1960 Olympics, and somewhere in Egypt they had a running military, and he won that. But he knew how the Europeans were going to accept me. It seems like back then, not only did we not have women in sports here in the U.S., but the Europeans really didn't want any women in sports. And they wouldn't even let the women practice on the ranges if the men were there. You just couldn't do that. And so he was smart enough. I'd shot all around the U.S. here, but I'd never been out of the country. So the first thing we did when we went to Europe that spring was he took me to see Herr Zimmerman, who was the president of the UIT, which was Union International Detour, which was world head of rifle shooting, or all shooting really. And so he took me in, and at that time in my life, I was maybe an inch taller, but I was about half as wide. And so I didn't look too dangerous. And he took me in to meet Herr Zimmerman, you should have this young lady meet you and all that. And while we were there, and he says, we'd like to put her on our team. Would that be all right? And Herr Zimmerman, being a good, honest pig, he says, oh, sure, if you're dumb enough to put a woman on your United States team, you can just do all that you want. We won. So I came back then. We had the first World Championships that I could shoot in 1966, so that was a few months later we came back. And I had made the two big teams for the World Championships. They're different courses of fire that you would shoot, but the big ones were 140 shots per record. You shot 40 prone, lying down, 40 in kneeling, and 40 in standing. And you did it at 50 meters with a 22 rifle, and the 10 ring was a little less than the size of a dime. And we also shot at 300 meters, which is about 330 yards. The 10 ring was about 3 inches in diameter, but let me tell you, it looked like a dot of a pencil when you were back on the firing line. It didn't look real big. And so I was on those two teams, and we just walked away with those two. And we also, the rest of the team, walked away with the other events. So we really cleaned house. So then Mr. Orth from the Olympic Committee asked the Olympic Committee, because they were also in charge of the Pan American Games, if I could compete there. Because up to then, it had been men only. They had open championships, and it was men only, no women. And there were no events for women. And so then I got to shoot on the Pan American Games. And whoever was watching over me did a good job, because I just walked away with all the medals. And so then that made it a lot easier when he went in to see the Olympic Committee about getting to shoot on the U.S. team if I made it for the Olympic Games someday. They said yes, I could. So from then on, that certainly was a goal. Now, let's see, what else here? I'm having my senior moment. Wanted to tell you, you all know about it being 40 years just this last Saturday for Title IX. And you all don't remember, most of you girls, what it was like not to have any sports at school. I mean, there was nothing. We couldn't even walk on the basketball court because somehow when we walked on it, we were going to just wipe it out. And we suggested sports, and oh no, it was going to ruin our lives, it was going to ruin our health. We were going to come back with broken legs and broken arms, and absolutely no girls could play sports. Well, The only thing you could do is, there was AAU sports, so I didn't do that in high school. I played softball for South Side Market. I have to think of that because my sister always called it South End instead of, but it was South Side Market. So I played b-ball with them and then went and played A-ball with OC Meat Company while I was in high school. And so that made that go good. But all we could do was be a pep club or a spirit club, and you usually had a sweater with your school's initial on it, and skirts, and you cheered for the boys. So that was fun because you were all together, you know, but it still wasn't as fun as playing. And so I have a sister that's 4 years older than me, and she also shot and was doing very well, but she's also very good at writing letters and politicking. And so the whole time after I started shooting for the Army, she just kept the letter lines going to the appropriate people and reminding them, you know, she's going to shoot this and she's going to shoot that, and want to watch. And so she really pushed them to start getting women's sports. And she actually worked with, I think it was Senator Ted Stevens from Alaska, who was recently killed in a plane crash 2 or 3 years ago here. And he was the main author for this Title IX Sports Act for women. And so she worked with him and some other people there too to get that written for girls. Now, as you probably guessed, it didn't go over well. The biggest problem is the main problem in all places is money. And most schools, most universities make their money on sports and football. And these football players really didn't want women's sports to have to use any of their money. I mean, we were really kind of worthless. Well, law said they were going to have to split it and give us some money too and have sports for women. And I read not too long ago that I think now in the universities, about 70%, 65 or 70% of the young women in universities participate in one sport or another while they're there. And that's great considering it was zero a number of years ago, 40 years ago. So, and while we're here, I was going to mention how we've come up in the world, but we were talking about Nadira there and her 42 points in that game she had, that tournament game. I'm old enough, I can remember, and y'all folks, older folks have to think about this a little, but I used to listen to KU basketball on the radio. Television sets weren't out there yet. And I can remember the day that Will Chamberlain played his first game for KU. And I was just ecstatic. And he had 42 points that night. He was just warming up. But that's hard to do. He was the first man to be able to just walk in there and do that. And so those 42 points are precious. They're hard to get. And then I have another young lady here in Topeka who is shooting, and her name is Caitlin Morrissey, and she's going to Texas Christian University in Texas, and shooting international rifle. Now, there's a gallery shooting, which is what we did when we were junior at the police station. There's a 22, you can do that inside. You have a bullet trap and everything, you do that inside. And so we started junior kids in there, and she went down there to shoot on a team that one of my shooting buddies who had shot with me was now coach after they had to have women coaches in women's sports. And she put together a rifle team that 2 years ago was the first time that all women's team won the NCAA championships. And they did it again this year. So women can shoot if you give us a chance. In fact, most of the coaches tell you they'd rather coach girls than boys because girls listen. We admit we don't know anything about it when you walk into it and listen. Whereas boys, you know, they've seen it on TV, they know how to handle that. So anyhow, you might watch for her name, Caitlin Morrissey. And we're glad that you're a seven on there with that 42 points. I wasn't there to see it, but I'm from K-State, so I'm glad to see that. Okay, well, how did I get started in it? My dad shot. He grew up on a farm by Barrett, and he hunted and did all that when they were little kids growing up. He went to work, and he had a friend who shot with the Capital City Rifle Club, small bore, or 22 is what it's called. And he got that started, and so he joined the Capital City Rifle Club. And then when I was 8 and my sister was 12, they started the junior club. And so then we could shoot there each Wednesday night. So that was a lot of fun. And since Dad was still shooting at that time, I used to like to tag along when he went. And they had the state shoot up at K-State each year. They had a nice range. Back then, all the land-grant colleges had to have a small bore range inside because all the males in a land-grant college had to take ROTCs. That's been abolished too in the past. But, so they all had rifle ranges and rifle teams then. And so I went up with my dad at K-State when I went up there. And I noticed right away that K-State had a bunch of people on their team. And they had about 5 or 6 All-Americans. And I said, oh my, I think I would like to be on that team. Well, so I talked to the coach a little bit, and he said, no women on the team, couldn't have that. But nobody else was going to let me shoot on their team either, so I'm going to K-State so I can shoot. Wonderful way to pick your college. Most of you have done it that way too, but it works out. And so I got up there, and the first year I couldn't shoot on the team. All Americans were seniors that year, so they graduated. And so I didn't get to shoot with K-State, but I went in and saw the colonel, and he said I could come down and shoot and practice on the range as much as I wanted to. So that was the key. So I did that, and then there was Manhattan had a little rifle team, and so they said I could shoot with them in the matches. So I did that. And my freshman year, by the time I got done in my freshman year, I was shooting better than most of the guys on the K-State team. And so the second year, we started off, and we got a new coach. And he decided that, well, we're not going to leave our best shooters sitting at home. So he would take my targets up each evening on our regular practice nights and show them to the colonel the next morning and mention that, I was a girl and I sure could like to shoot on the team. And he finally said, well, she can shoot on it if she has a chaperone for the team, for the matches that we go out of town and stay overnight. So you know who I called? Mom! I need a chaperone. So she came along. I'm sure that was exciting for her to be with a bunch of kids cooped up in a bus to go drive wherever. And but anyhow, so I owe my mom a lot of thanks because she spent some long nights probably and tired next days at work trying to chaperone for me. But anyhow, Colonel Badger, who was the head of the ROTC department at K-State, then said, I could shoot. So I started shooting, and I was having a great time. So what do you do in the summer? Well, in the summer, it was too hot to shoot in the gallery range, and school wasn't there, so most of the kids weren't there. But the Army at that time had the U.S. divided up into 6 groups, or they called them armies. Well, we're right in the middle, and we were in the 5th Army here. And it just so happened the 5th Army had their rifle team at Fort Riley, which is like 18 miles from K-State. So we shot against them in the winter. We shot a lot of little towns around there. My senior year, we actually had 36 matches. We weren't regulated by NCAA back then. We shot as many matches as we could. And so they were really good to us. They knew us all because we shot inside together, and they would loan us rifles and all the ammo we could shoot. And we'd shoot with them every day in practice. So that's where I got my outside big bore shooting. And we shot there to shoot 100 yards, or 200 yards, 300 yards, and 600 yards. And sometimes 1,000 yards. But it's not the usual course of fire. So anyhow, I decided, watching their scores and watching my scores through the summer as I got through school, that if I went to the Army, I could shoot my way onto a team somewhere. So I went into the Army, and asked Colonel if he'd let me be on the Army team. And